Pokemon ROM hacking scene has had a plethora of well-made and high-quality hacks, but very few have been balanced around multiplayer. One in particular stands high above the rest as the crown jewel of a fan-made competitive scene, Mariomon. Mariomon is a ROM hack developed by the YouTuber AlphaRad and the Too Many Productions team that blends the elements of Mario and Pokemon together into a delicious fruit smoothie of a game. All of the Pokemon in the game are instead called captures, named after the mechanic from Mario Odyssey, all based on several Mario enemies and characters from throughout the series. You've got the standard early route picks like Goomba and Koopa Troopa, representatives from the modern 3D games like Chincho and Molluskinen from Odyssey, and even representation from the RPGs like Snoozorb and Yoob from Partners in Time, and Beanie from Superstar Saga. They really went with Beanie and not Hourglass. Oh, I see how it is. But how well balanced is the dex? Truth be told, Mariomon was originally designed for single player before the suggestion to add Mariomon to Pokéathlon, which is like Pokemon Showdown but for fan games. I would also like to stress that this video will only focus on the VGC doubles metagame and not OU singles. I'm sorry Gloomtail fans, but this video is not for you. Before we talk about the current state of the VGC metagame, we need to go back to when the game first dropped, on April 3rd, 2025. Once the game finally dropped and the format was added to Pokéathlon, people flocked to the site to try out the new and exciting meta, filled with an entirely unique dex. It was interesting. Certainly not as broken as it could have been for a game designed around single player, but there were some issues. For example, there were certain move and ability combinations that were pretty problematic. Magikoopa had Prankster with After You, which could absolutely decimate opposing teams when used on an ally with a strong spread move like Water Spout or Birdo's Stab Pixelate Boom Burst. Shy Guy and its evolution, Sniffit, both originally had Decorate. Normally Decorate is balanced due to the intended user of the move Alchemy being pretty mid. However, Sniffit is a pretty bulky normal steel type with a great support move pool, including moves like Fake Out and Follow Me. And Shy Guy, while significantly frailer, has Prankster as its hidden ability. You can imagine just how powerful you can become by getting your attack stat doubled as soon as the first turn starts. One very nice target for this was Molluskinen, which I'll just call Mol for the rest of the video. It's a water-fire type with access to Water Spout and Steam Eruption, which is normally the mythical Volcanion signature move, along with an extremely slow 25 base speed, making it perfect for Trick Room teams. It also had superb bulk with 140 HP, 90 physical defense, and 100 special defense, on top of a very respectable 110 special attack stat. You could not kill this thing without some casualties. By far the biggest target for Decorate was Lubba, who had Blissy's stat spread along with a Psychic Fairy type combination. Combined with Cosmic Power for defense buffs and Stored Power dealing damage based on how many buffs you have, Lubba would become an unkillable titan that could not be stopped. Even without Decorate support, Lubba originally had Triage, which is normally balanced by Comfey being pretty mid, at least without it. Lubba having the same stats as Blissey with Triage Life Dew for priority team healing and Follow Me for redirection support meant that games would go on and on and on until eventually someone's team would get whittled down to nothing. It was truly a meta for a stall fan to get their sick kicks. Oh yeah, and Blue Yoshi got beat up for some reason. It wasn't broken or anything, but it was the fastest beat up user in the game that could enable stamina or justified strategies. The beat up on Blue Yoshi wasn't even in the final release build. Pokéathlon just pulled from a pre-release version of the game for that one. It also had Aerialate, but it had no good moves to use it with. At this point, Blue Yoshi, or Boshi, was also pretty mid. Ultimately, while it was still a fun format, there were some things that were just way too much to handle, and as such, the devs announced the 1.4 balance patch, in part based on community feedback from both the VGC and singles players. This was a really cool decision for the devs to make, considering how Mariomon was originally just going to be a single-player focused game. So, before we delve into the meta as it currently stands, let's discuss some of the balance changes that were made in 1.4. And I'll say it now, they were for the better. First off, Lubba fucking died! Okay, it's not terrible now, but its toolkit was nerfed significantly. It lost access to Follow Me, Life Dew, Triage, and even a Heal Pulse for good measure. Since Heal Pulse and Life Dew were the only ally healing moves in the game, that means that the only way to heal its teammates now is with Wish and Ally Switch, which is just the absolute bare minimum form of healing that you can get in the whole format. While Lubba got Triage replaced with Victory Star, which is just sort of whatever, Luma instead got Friend Guard, becoming the only Mon in the game to have it. These changes significantly altered the meta and made the Lubba line still occasionally useful without being the #1 Mons in the format. Are the Celestial picks? Well, no, not even close, but having a B-tier niche isn't half bad. Along with the changes made to Lubba, Shy Guy and Sniffit no longer get Decorate, and thank God for that. Maul lost 20 points in HP, which made it substantially easier to take down while still being quite bulky, and Boshi lost Beat Up. But, in its place, Boshi got Hyper Voice. That single change turned Boshi from a decent Tailwind setter into an actual threat. It finally gets to utilize Aerialate to the fullest, which sets it apart from more reliable Tailwind setters like Magikoopa. Sure, Magikoopa has priority Tailwind, but Boshi is tied for being the 3rd fastest Mon in the whole game at 130 base speed, and it can hit hard with spread Hyper Voice damage. On that note, here's some of the biggest additions in the patch. Not only did Boshi gain Hyper Voice, but so did Birdo. Wow. Yes, Pixelate Boomburst may give you the funny numbers, but Hyper Voice just made Birdo even better now that she didn't need to hit her partners every time she attacks. It took away the risk-reward aspect of Birdo and made her objectively good instead of objectively good with an asterisk. I don't mind it much, but it is kind of a shame that she didn't really need the move like Boshi needed Hyper Voice. Taunt also got much wider distribution. A handful of Mons gained Headlong Rush, Poison Pokey and Porcupuffer both gained Barbarage, which is nice. Yux now learns Psychic Terrain, since it wasn't in the game before, at all. And Sniffit became a special attacker. As for why the guy known for shooting things was a physical attacker in the first place, we may never know. There's some other changes made in the patch that are too small for me to go into here, so I'll just leave the patch notes document in the description of this video. But by far the biggest change was to Huff and Puff. Before, Huff was basically just a Weezing clone with the physical and special stats swapped, and it only had neutralizing gas. It had its uses, but there weren't any abilities like the terrain setting ones or the ruin abilities that are worth disabling. It wasn't something that you could just put on any team. But in 1.4, not only did it get Levitate like Weezing, but it became Poison Electric to boot. This is without a doubt the biggest change made in the balance patch. Huff and Puff had essentially been replaced by an entirely new Mon from 1.3 to 1.4. With its new Electric Stab, and the fact that Maul lost 20 HP in the same patch, Huff and Puff was positioned to be a very reliable electric type that could also hit fairies like Birdo quite well. With the new addition of Levitate to Huff's kit, neutralizing gas became the less common option, making it way easier to include on any team. The ground immunity made it stand out from a sea of ground-weak Mons in the format, and the new electric typing made it one of the most consistent electric types as well, alongside the likes of Heave Ho, a slow tanky attacker with Wide Guard and the Galvanize ability for physical electric attacks, and occasionally Spark, a fast but frail Mon with a tricky Electrify Lightning Rod combo. While I am personally quite partial to the Assault Vest set, Huff's most common set quickly became Choice Specs, as it takes advantage of Huff and Puff's great moveset for a special attacker, consisting of Sludge Bomb, Thunderbolt, Heat Wave, and Volt Switch, while still having access to some other niche options like Ice Beam, Icy Wind, and Strange Steam. You might think Bolt Beam coverage being niche is crazy, but Ice Beam is niche because a lot of the ground and dragon types are just not popular enough to run ice coverage for damage. It quickly became a common pairing with Major Burrows, due to the strong combination of Earthquake next to a ground immune electric type. It may not be on every team, but Huff's sheer flexibility with its unique role is not to be underestimated, even going so far as to not only win the VGC Invitational on DRXX's team, but also the recent Open VGC tournament as well. You may also notice that Burrows was on the Invitational winning team, but not on the team that won the Open tournament. Keep that in mind. So now that we talked about what the meta was like before the balance patch and what got changed in the patch itself, now it's finally time to talk about the meta as it stands today, and some of the mons that have truly defined it. Note that I won't be able to talk about every single even remotely viable mon in detail, or this video would go on for way too long. I love to talk about how Chincho is God's greatest gift to mankind, or how utter dog shit Pidgeot is, but I digress. To start, we need to talk about what is undoubtedly, well, maybe not the #1 mon of the format, but the mon that holds everything together like glue. One of the core mons that prevents hyper offense from sweeping the meta. Gooper Blooper is the giant blooper boss from Mario Sunshine, and in Mariomon, it is the final evolved form of the water starter. It is a slow, bulky water poison type with a monstrous 130 special attack stat, and it is undeniably one of the single best mons in the game, with its water poison typing giving it an extremely crucial resistance to water and fairy attacks, which helps keeps both Birdo and Maul at bay. Near the start of the 1.4 meta, it most commonly ran the Assault Vest, or AV set, consisting of Sludge Bomb, Muddy Water, Flip Turn, and Snipe Shot. Yeah, Snipe Shot. Turns out a strong stab move that ignores redirection is incredible in a mon that can actually take a hit. Flip Turn was an especially nice, slow pivoting option that let its more specially frail allies in safely. AV Gooper was an incredible special wall that could reliably dish out punishment, handle special threats much better, and it could help you reposition with its pivoting option. However, AV Gooper began to decline once it was more apparent that it didn't really solve the problem of it still being extremely weak to physical attackers. AV just kind of made its already good matchups better. The lack of Protect limited your defensive options with Gooper, leaving fewer options if it was under pressure. So what was done to address this problem? Well, aside from the occasional Acid Armor Gooper, which is viable, albeit uncommon, it was discovered that the fast substitute Gooper was really good. I'm talking game-changingly good. Base 60 speed doesn't sound like much that can be fast by modern Pokemon standards, well, with your Flutter Mains and Miraidons, but keep in mind that Mariomon has a much lower power level overall. Out of the entire dex, there are a whopping 37 fully evolved mons that are slower than Gooper at 60 base speed, many of them being viable if not meta-defining. Aside from speed, Fast Goop uses the combination of Substitute and Black Sludge to give itself so much more longevity, easily beating the AV Gooper set in the mirror. Even in Trick Room, which takes advantage of the typically high speed investment, the Substitute set can manage itself quite well by stalling out the Trick Room turn count. Behind Sub, Gooper can just fire away with Snipe Shot and Sludge Bomb, racking up chip damage while continually healing. It doesn't even have to worry about getting status or having its stats dropped, because Sub blocks those. Overall, Gooper is an incredibly solid mon. It might not have the comically large damage output as Birdo or Maul, but it's a very important defensive centerpiece in the format. Although, shoutouts to the Specs Gooper set. Now that hit like a bag of bricks. It's a shame not a whole lot of new players use Gooper, because I just love seeing it do its thing. In fact, from what we know about the teams used in the Open Tournament, of the 9 teams that used Gooper, 5 of them made top 8. It's that good. That's all I really have to say about Gooper. It's a fun, meta-defining mon that's worth trying out. On the other hand, what if there was a mon that was meta-defining, but in the most frustrating way possible? What if there was a Mon that was so good at its job that every team had to have a solid answer into it? Well, there is one such Mon. King Boo.
Excellent! Excellent!
My friend, do you fly away now? To a world that abhors you and I?
Shut up!
All that awaits you
Shut up! I'm warning
is a
you!
somber morrow, no matter where the winds may blow. I don't see Burdo today, but are you game?
King Boo is, without a doubt, the most infamous Mon in the format, and for a good reason. It's an extremely bulky, dark ghost type with Levitate, giving it a whopping 4 immunities and just 1 weakness to Fairy. With the fake-out immunity it gets from its ghost typing, and its high bulk meaning it can run Mental Herb to block Taunt without issue, it quickly became the single best dedicated Trick Room setter in the format, far outclassing the likes of Magic Bounce Yucks, or even its pre-evolved form Balloon Boo. There were some people that used to think Balloon Boo was the best Trick Room setter early on in the format, since it actually has 20 more HP than its evolution, and its lower defenses are compensated by Eviolite. But the problem was that not only was it susceptible to taunt since it couldn't hold Mental Herb, but since it was mono ghost type, one super effective knockoff was all it took to lose any of the additional bulk it had over King Boo. King Boo also gets 1 million fucking moves for some reason. It hardly ever needs to run most of them, like Light Screen, Reflect, Taunt, U-Turn, and even Shadow Force. Not Phantom Force, Shadow Force, Giratina's signature move, despite only having 55 base physical attack. It goes to show how its insatiable greed means it can get everything it wants and more, while some Mons can barely scrape together enough good moves for 4 move slots. Of the moves it does use, there are some niche ones like Nasty Plot, which can be used to bolster its average 90 special attack stat, or you can pair it with the gimmicky Co-Star Birdo set, though you lose out on Pixelate. The main set King Boo always runs is max HP and max defense with a defense boosting nature, since it already has the 3rd highest special defense in the game, with a moveset of Trick Room, Will-O-Wisp, Bitter Malice, and Mystical Fire. All it has to do is set Trick Room and sit there, spamming Bitter Malice and Mystical Fire to lower the opponent's attack and special attack respectively, while burning any physical attackers with Will-O-Wisp. It even likes to run Citrus Berry over Mental Herb for healing, since it scared most of the Mons away from running Taunt. With this set, it can perfectly debilitate the opponent's team and set its allies up to clean house, often forcing the opponent to switch to remove the debuffs or be whittled down into a helpless burning trash heap. Because it runs max HP and max defense, it can often survive even the most powerful physical attacks from full, like Choice Band, Angry Sun, Sacred Fire, in Sun, or Dragon's Maw, 5-hit Scale Shot, although it still takes heavy damage. And side note, but Maw can't even do that consistently anymore because it was discovered that loaded dice isn't even in the game. Surely the 3,000 purple coins you get in its place make up for it. Because of King Boo's bulk, players have been running fucking Hyper Beam on Pixelate Birdo just to guarantee the OHKO on it. If Gooper is the main thing holding Birdo back, then Birdo is the main thing holding King Boo back for being an unkillable beast. While King Boo might sound annoying to play against, there have been some other meta developments that help remedy King Boo's dominance. For starters, Scrappy Elite X-Naught has been a lot more common. It's the only Mon in the game that can fake out King Boo, and its partial normal typing makes it immune to Bitter Malice, so it can't get its attack dropped. It also commonly runs Lumberry to effectively ignore Will-O-Wisp for a turn, which is often all it needs to rack up damage and have its partner get the KO. Birdo's common usage also means that King Boo isn't always safe to come out, since Birdo's Hyper Voice is still a guaranteed 2-hit KO. Even slower Trick Room Mons like Galvanize Heave-Ho started running Facade as a secondary attacking option to still do damage even after the burn. Also, if King Boo is by itself in the endgame while its opponent has more than 1 Mon left, it's kind of shit out of luck when it comes to dealing actual damage. In short, King Boo is absolutely a top 5 Mon, if not top 3, if not top 1. But even still, there are ways around it if you play your cards right. As an aside, I somewhat recently made a response form asking players what they thought of the format, and out of the 11 responses made by the top players in the format, the most requested mon that should be nerfed is King Boo. It's not quite broken like the stuff before the balance patch, but it's still just a bit too good at what it does. Similarly, the most requested addition to be made in the future 2.0 update is a physical fairy attacker, pretty much solely for King Boo, since the best we have right now is Birdo, which only has 65 base physical attack. And like, if you're running physical Birdo, then you're just using it wrong. Speaking of Birdo, it has always been a top 5 mon in the format, consistently ranking second on the monthly usage rankings, and ranking first in usage throughout the entirety of the Open Tournament, with 6 of the top 8 teams running it. Birdo's stats and general role are very similar to Sylveon, what with them both being pure fairy types with pixelate hyper voice and all. Only Birdo's stats are a bit more focused on offense, with 130 base special attack, whereas Sylveon is higher HP in special defense, but only 110 special attack. The key difference between the two is Birdo's access to Boom Burst, and its much wider move pool compared to Sylveon. And while Sylveon's 60 base speed might be pretty slow by modern Pokemon standards, much like Gooper Blooper, Birdo's base 60 speed puts it at a reasonable spot in Mariomon VGC, potentially outspeeding a lot of key threats, like Gooper Blooper and Major Burrows. There's only so much time before the world sees you for what you really are, Burrows. Birdo typically runs either Throat Spray, which raises its special attack by 1 stage after using a sound-based move like Boom Burst or Hyper Voice, Choice Specs, which just does absurd levels of damage at the cost of being more vulnerable, or Pixie Plate for a more immediate 20% damage boost to fairy moves. Near the start of 1.4, Birdo would most commonly run 2 attacking moves, those being Hyper Voice alongside Flamethrower to hit steel types. With a meteoric rise of King Boo and the drop in a certain steel type in particular, Birdo instead runs Hyper Voice and Hyper Beam to better handle King Boo. The other 2 move slots it runs are filled by Protect, which is to be expected, and Lovely Kiss, the 75 accurate sleep-inducing move that is normally exclusive to Jinx. Despite the inaccuracy, Lovely Kiss is a huge deal for it, being able to flip some matchups in their heads, like Burrows, Gooper Blooper, assuming it doesn't have a setup to block the move, and Maul in Trick Room. Sometimes all you need to do is give your enemy a big, fat, wet kiss on the lips for love to win in the end. Additionally, Birdo also likes to be paired with the aforementioned Sniff It for redirection and fake-out support, although both are very susceptible to spread damage. Sniff It isn't getting its own dedicated section in this video, but I also have to mention that it is a phenomenal support mon in the format, in part due to the reasons I've already mentioned, but also because it's a good secondary Trick Room setter alongside King Boo. Other than that, there really isn't much more to say about Birdo. It's just one of the more straightforward mons in the format, and it's very good at getting the job done. Originally in the script writing for this video, I was gonna jump in and talking about Magikoopa here, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I need to talk about one of its biggest counters in Elite X-Naught. Even though I already brought it up a few times earlier, I need to reiterate that this little guy is really good. Elite X-Naught, or Exin, is a high-ranking grunt enemy from Paper Mario The 1000-Year Door, and is Alpharad's personal favorite funny little guy.
Really, X-Naughts are my favorite little guys in Mario, probably. They're just so funny.
In Mariomon, it's a dark normal physical attacker, and if I have to compare him to anything in standard VGC, it's kind of like the Mariomon equivalent of Kangaskhan. If you kind of squint at it a bit. Like Kangaskhan, Exin has the niche of Scrappy plus Fake Out with a respectable attack stat. While Exen certainly wishes it could give itself Parental Bond and 100 more base stat total, 105 attack and stab knockoff plus Sucker Punch make it a very useful support attacker. It also has Regenerator as its Sin ability, but with how prominent King Boo is, alongside the fact that it doesn't have any pivoting moves, it never has the opportunity to really use it. It is also worth mentioning that while the other two Fake-Out Mons outside of the Sniffet line, Bandit and Ukiki, are faster and have access to pivoting moves like Parting Shot and U-Turn, and in Ukiki's case, Will-O-Wisp for some reason, both are kind of forced to run Focus Sash due to their frailty. Meanwhile, Exen has a solid 190-80 bulk, meaning it can run a wide variety of items like Lumberry, Citrus Berry, Assault Vest, or even Covert Cloak to avoid fake-out flinches from Bandit and Ukiki. Exen's EV spreads tend to focus on HP and attack, or speed and attack depending on its teammates' speed tiers or what key threats you want to look out for. Besides Fake Out, Knockoff, and Sucker Punch, the last moveset can really be just about anything depending on what you want for your team. From what I've seen and played myself, you can run Taunt to prevent status moves, Return for solid neutral damage, Drain Punch, Brick Break, or Superpower for fighting coverage, Facade in case you aren't running Lumberry for Will-O-Wisp, Coaching to buff physical attackers, or I don't know, some random elemental punch moves I guess? Protect maybe? This thing even gets Powder, that one random priority move that fucking parries fire-type attacks that Vivillon had until it was Dexited in Gen 8. I've never seen anyone run it, but it is funny. Also, minor tangent here, but how come Exen is one of maybe 2 physical attackers with a decent special defense stat? Most of the special attackers in the format have very usable physical defense and great special defense. While physical attackers have to settle with 70 special defense if they're lucky, you have absolute shitters like T-Rex, a dragon type with a mediocre 50 special defense, meaning its key resistances to water and fire hardly matter when it dies to a resistant fart. There's also Mare, that one eel enemy that scares children with 40 special defense, and the absolutely unusable Sumo Bro with 30 special defense. Like, I get wanting to balance strong physical attackers with some weakness, but this is ridiculous. Those two even aren't remotely usable despite having some good traits, like Mare's water typing, intimidate, and huge attack stat, or Sumo Bro having Urshifu's unseen fist ability to hit through protect. They're just kind of sad, really. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, Exen. Exen's pretty good. Special shoutouts go to Owly, who's a player that has believed in the value of Exen since day one. And look, for being the biggest Exen hater on the planet, being the 3rd most used mod in the format as of June has to mean something now, come on! Now that we've talked about the 2nd most used mon, Birdo, and the 3rd most used mon, Exen, it's finally time we talk about the single most used mon in the format, Magikoopa. Magikoopa is a fast, special attacking flying type with the abilities Prankster, Magic Guard, and the custom hidden ability Transmutate, which turns normal type moves into psychic type moves with a 20% damage boost. I'll just say it, no one uses Transmutate. It already gets Psychic for good stab damage, and the best normal type attack it gets is Tri-Attack, so it doesn't even get the valuable spread damage like Birdo or Boshi with Hyper Voice. Outside of the niche offense set with Magic Guard and Life Orb, which means it gets the 30% damage buff without taking Life Orb recoil, Magikoopa always runs a fast support set with Prankster and Tailwind, typically holding either Focus Sash or Covert Cloak, meaning it's guaranteed to set Tailwind before anyone else outside of getting hit with Fake Out. Compared to other priority Tailwind setters like Spindrift with Prankster and Pyoro with Gale Wings, Magikoopa's toolkit is absolutely stacked. For starters, it's unique in that it's the only mon in the game with priority Light Screen, Reflect, and Tailwind. There's never been a Pokemon in the mainline games with this combination of moves with Prankster, which gives Magikoopa the unique role of a screen setter with speed control, unless you want to count Grimmsnarl with Thunderwave, which Magikoopa also gets, funnily enough. In fact, a Magikoopa running both screens, Tailwind and Psychic, won the creator tournament on DRXX's team, which is pretty cool to see. On top of screens, Magikoopa also has Speed Swap, which, as the name implies, swaps Magikoopa's speed stat with whatever it targets the move with. This is not only great at making its allies much faster, but it's especially good at disrupting Trick Room teams by suddenly making the opponent much slower than they should be. And if Tailwind, Thunder Wave, and Speed Swap weren't enough for you, it also occasionally runs Icy Wind for spread damage that lowers both opponents' speed. Its offensive move pool is phenomenal, which makes it even easier to run on a wide variety of teams. I've already mentioned Psychic as its main attacking move, but can also run a combination of Hurricane and Rain Dance on dedicated Rain teams, so it can set Rain if it's been overwritten, while also making Hurricane perfectly accurate as an attacking move. It does something similar with Heat Wave and Sunny Day on Sun teams. Hell, it can even run Meteor Beam! And while Exen and King Boo are normally very strong counters to Magikoopa, it occasionally runs Moonblast to chunk both of them for solid, super effective damage. If there's any downside to Magikoopa, then it would have to be how difficult it is to use against dedicated Trick Room teams. Speed Swap helps, but it can only do so much, especially if it's running the Psychic plus 3 support move set, which makes it a sitting duck versus Exen and King Boo, among several other usable dark types. It is kind of a victim of 4 move slot syndrome in this regard, since it would love to run coverage to hit its biggest threats, but it also wants Speed Swap if Trick Room does go up, and Protect would be really nice if it can't run Cloak to negate Fake Out Flinch. Not to mention, the 2 teams that made to finals of the Open Tournament didn't even bring Magikoopa, since their style of play didn't really need the immediate speed control and Prankster Tailwind. So yes, while Magikoopa may be sitting at an incredible 46% usage as of June 2025, that doesn't mean it's essential. It's honestly just really solid, and definitely worth using, although it's still worth checking out the other Tailwind setters. Of the top most used mons in the format, the last one I'm going to talk about is Mollusclensur, or Maul. Buckle up, because this one's going to be a long one, since I'm not only going to talk about Maul's competitive history, but its prior evolution, Gushin, as well. I already touched on Maul much earlier in the video, but I need to reiterate just how good this mon is. It's a water-fire type that is extremely bulky, extremely slow for Trick Room, and it has access to one of the strongest spread moves in the game with Water Spout. Unlike Gooper Blooper, which is more suited to balance, Maul is at its best on slower teams that work best in Trick Room, or on more dedicated Rain teams. King Boo is obviously a great partner for it since it can set Trick Room, but also because of its damage reduction bolstering Maul's already great bulk. Rain teams do have the issue of doubling down on electric and ground weaknesses, since Mariomon's resident Drizzlemon, Porcupuffer, is water poison. While Porcupuffer has Drizzle, it's more like the secondary Rain setter after Rain Dance Magikoopa. It doesn't really do much while it's on the field outside of Bar Barrage or Flip Turn to Pivot, with the occasional Psychic Fangs for Gooper Blooper, which, admittedly, is a really nice coverage option to have. It's not a bad mon by any means, since Water Poison is a great combination to have, and 65 base speed does mean it can potentially outspeed Gooper Blooper and Birdo, but it's probably the only weather setter you don't use because of the setter, you know? Maul and Gushin are so good, they elevate Porcupuffer by association. Going back to Maul, it can also work well in Sun. It loses a fair bit of damage by not running Water Spout, but in exchange you can run Heat Wave for spread damage or Mystical Fire for single target damage with stat reduction, which more than makes up for it. In fact, the teams used by Paldean Bowser and Look It Up VGC in top 8 of the Open Tournament both used Maul with Angry Sun, which is very interesting. Although in Paldean Bowser's case he did use Yux as a Trick Room setter with Rain Dance, so it was more of a mixed weather team. The item Maul likes to run tends to change based on the kind of team it's built around, typically going for either Mystic Water for additional water-type damage, or Leftovers for recovery, although Assault Vest is used on rare occasions. During the early days of the format, the most common set you'd see would consist of Water Spout, Steam Eruption, Heat Wave, and Protect. Typically, Maul runs Marvel Scale as its ability for the potential defense buff it gets if it's paralyzed, or poisoned through something like Goober's Sludge Bomb. It also gets Swift Swim, but it's not really that good in open team sheets when your opponent can see the fast Water Spout coming. That, and it makes Maul worse in Trick Room, which is supposed to be the best position for it to be in. It has been more recently discovered just how viable the Leftovers with Acid Armor and Recover set really is. You completely get rid of Water Spout and rely instead on Steam Eruption and either Heat Wave or Mystical Fire for damage, and it's especially nice when paired with King Boo's damage reduction. You lose out on Protect, but after just one Acid Armor, you can comfortably tank most attacks and heal back up. It's not perfect, since the opponent can whittle you down in a 2v1 endgame, but it's still very solid, being the set that was run on Luke's winning team in the open tournament. Despite Maul's staggeringly slow 25 base speed, making it the 12th slowest Mon in the entire game, with only 4 fully evolved Mons slower than it, there are a number of ways to best it, even while Trick Room is active. Outside of the aforementioned Speed Swap on Magic Koopa, there's also Room Service Heave Ho. Room Service is an item that you basically never see in standard VGC, but Trick Room Maul was becoming enough of a problem that players had to innovate a bit to reliably beat it. A minimum speed Heave Ho will always outspeed a minimum speed Maul, both before and during Trick Room, with a standard 252 attack EVs, with a Brave Nature giving a solid chance of OHKOing Maul from full health, even with max HP EVs, which Maul often runs. Heave is also one of the few Mons in the game that gets Wide Guard, making its Maul matchup even better, since it can block both Heat Wave and especially Water Spout. While Maul is a slow and bulky attacker, Gushon is, strangely enough, the fast, frail attacker. I find this to be very interesting, since typically when 2 Mons on the same line have competitive viability, the unevolved form is the slower, bulky one, typically holding Eviolite, while the evolved form is the fast attacker, like Porygon 2 versus Porygon Z. And even if the evolution is slower, it's not going to be by 75 whole points. I just think it's neat how Mariomon bucked a common trend even with just this one evolution line. Gushon has 100 base speed, putting it leagues above the 50 to 80 speed tier most of the meta is in, while still being slower than all of the main Tailwind setters like Magic Koopa, Boshi, Pyoro, and even Spindrift. It only has 60 base special attack, but the real damage comes from its unique Water Bubble ability, which it loses when it evolves into Maul. Aside from a pointless burn immunity and the additional resistance to fire-type moves, it gives Gushon a 2x attack boost to all of its water-type attacks, essentially giving it huge power only for that type. Compared to Maul, Gushon does roughly 30% more damage on average, which can turn some guaranteed 2-hit KOs into guaranteed 1-hit KOs. The biggest problem is that it is extremely frail and easily susceptible to priority. Just one Fake Out or Sucker Punch is all it takes to chunk Gushon so hard that Water Spout's base power plummets to nothing. It can still use Hydro Pump or Water-type Weather Ball for solid damage, but you lose a massive party-wide nuke option. A lot of beginners tend to run Choice Scarf or Choice Specs for the added speed or damage respectively, but it's just not ideal. Unless you are very careful in moving anything with a priority move, or the Trick Room setters, Choice-locked Gushon is very difficult to use effectively. Of the higher-ranked Gushon teams in the open tournament, they typically ran either Eviolite or Water Gem. I also forgot to mention earlier, but a small handful of gems are allowed in Mariomon, but only the ones obtainable in-game. Thankfully, on top of Water Gem, Flying Gem is one of them, which lets the Acrobatics plus Unburden combo on something like PD Piranha or Superfly see some use. Eviolite helps out Gushon's bulk, allowing it to run Protect to block Fake Out, while letting it survive more hits than it otherwise would, which tends to be 1 hit instead of 0. This kind of Gushon especially likes redirection support with mons like Sniff It with Follow Me or Weird Virus with a Lightning Rod ability. As for Water Gem, it basically goes in the opposite direction. Gushon still runs Protect for Fake Out, but it's still expected to get KO'd very quickly, so it makes the one move Gushon can get off really hurt. This set is better on more aggressive teams that focus on hitting as hard and as fast as possible, while still being able to actually get those hits off. Both Gushin and Maul are very solid mons in the format, and it's neat seeing two mons of the same evolutionary line be viable, while both serving similar yet distinct roles. I prefer Maul for its bulk and its ability to run well in Sun, but Gushin can still dish out some serious damage if you play your cards right. And that about does it for all of the most used mons. Although, there is another mon that I also want to mention, not because it's the most commonly used. In fact, it's never even made it to the top 12 in terms of usage, but it has still made a lasting impact on the metagame, and is widely agreed upon as top tier despite its low usage. Angry Sun. Angry Sun from Super Mario Bros. 3 is Mariomon's Droughtmon, and it's extremely strong. You wouldn't think so looking at its stats alone. Its bulk is subpar, its base speed is 70, which is higher than a lot of mons, but still lower than the base 80 plus mons it's afraid of, and its attack stat is 106, which is decent but not crazy. However, on top of Drought boosting its stab fire moves, it gets two moves that have perfect unresisted coverage. Sacred Fire and Photon Geyser. Yes, it gets two legendary signature moves. Sacred Fire is a 100 base power fire type move with a 50% chance to burn, and Photon Geyser is a 100 base power psychic move that becomes physical or special based on which stat is higher, so physical in this case. There is no mon in the entire metagame that resists this combination of attacks, although Photon Geyser isn't as strong since it doesn't get the stab or the boost from Sun. Photon Geyser is especially nice into the water poison types of the format, Gooper Plooper and Porcupuffer, being a 2-hit KO into each on average. If unresisted coverage wasn't enough, it gets Stomping Tantrum and Rock Slide for opposing fire types too. Compared to other weather setters, including Porcupuffer for rain, Mr. Blizzard for snow, and Twister for sand, Angry Sun arguably has the most consistent group of allies and weather abusers. Rain is still very, very good, as if already mentioned, but you can still run Mole on other teams, including Sun. Outside of electric types like Heave-Ho or Huff and Puff, the latter being ironic given Huff's history with Suns, Angry Sun supporters tend to only stick to Sun or the occasional balance team. For starters, Ukiki is a normal ground type and the fastest fake-out user in the game at 100 base speed. The rest of its stats are pretty low aside from its base 90 physical attack, so it often runs Focus Sash to make it survive for just a little bit longer. It often runs Stomping Tantrum to help damage the fire types Angry Sun has a harder time damaging, and Triple Axle to get the KO on mons like Magic Koopa and Boshi through Sash. Its last move slot can change based on what you want, but I've seen U-turn for pivoting, coaching to buff Angry Sun, return for a neutral stab option, or even the occasional Will-O-Wisp to burn opposing physical attackers. It typically runs Defiant as its ability, so it gets the attack boost in the face of King Boo using Mystical Fire, or the occasional Icy Wind or Intimidate. Although Vital Spirit might be useful to negate Birdo's Lovely Kiss, but it hasn't been explored, so take that with a grain of salt. Similarly to Ukiki, Phanto also acts as a fast coaching support mon, although it can do far more than just that. It's a Dark Fairy type with poor bulk, meaning it typically runs Sash to take a hit, and 90 special attack, which is just okay. What makes Phanto stand out, however, is its ludicrous 145 speed stat, and the Shadow Tag ability. 145 speed makes it the second fastest mon in the entire format, making it only slower than Spark's 150 base speed. Shadow Tag is an incredible trapping ability, which helps Angry Sun not worry about predicting switches so it can safely fire off Sacred Fires without issue, not to mention prevent other weather setters like Porcupuffer from switching in so the opponent doesn't win the weather war. Besides coaching for buffing support and Moonblast for damage, Phanto also runs Parting Shot for pivoting and debuffing after you to make sure its ally gets its attack off before anything else, though not nearly as broken as Magic Koopa's Prankster after you pre-patch, and Glare as an extremely safe speed control option. Next up is Lava Drop, which is one of only 2 mons in the game with solar power, alongside Parabeanie. Don't use Parabeanie. Lava Drop is extremely fast at 110 base speed, tie it with Magic Koopa, which turns it into the perfect Sun Sweeper. Lava Drop typically runs Life Orb, with a moveset of Heat Wave, Flamethrower, or the occasional Thunderbolt or Will-O-Wisp, Scorching Sands for ground coverage, and Protect. It's very easily knocked out in one hit, but it can reach Diet Chi-Yu levels of damage. Heat Wave versus the standard King Boo set is a guaranteed 2-hit KO on a neutral hit. It kind of has the same problem Gushin has, where it's extremely weak to priority moves, but considering it's taking Life Orb and Solar Power chip damage every turn, it's not going to be here for a long time. But it is here for a good time. Last up is Blarg, which is a Dragon Fire type, and was originally designed to be closer to Gyarados in design, evolving from the weak Podoboo at level 20, and having a 540 base stat total, and it had Intimidate. Needless to say, this was very broken for in-game playthroughs, so it now evolves at level 40, and Intimidate was replaced with the practically useless Magma Armor. Blarg has a great 125 special attack, respectable 80 base speed, and a solid 95-180 bulk. It most commonly runs an item like Life Orb or Choice Specs for the extra damage, although it can occasionally run Air Balloon on Sun teams so it doesn't get destroyed by ground moves like half of the standard Sun team. Blarg runs a moveset of Heat Wave for stab sun-boosted spread damage, Dragon Pulse as a decent neutral option into most targets, while also being super effective into opposing Blarg and other dragons, and either Thunderbolt or Scorching Sands based on your personal preference. It's particularly nice as an answer to Sun, since it's one of only a few 4x fire resists in the whole game, alongside Maul and, Boss Brolder? And technically Water Bubble Gushin, but it still takes like 50% from Sacred Fire anyway. Trick Room is particularly tough for hyper-offensive Sun teams, with Gooper Blooper and Maul outspeeding and dealing serious damage while in Trick Room, even with Sun up. Funnily enough, one of the harder matchups for Angry Sun is Happy Moon, its celestial counterpart. Happy Moon usage has plummeted from where it was at the start of the format, dropping from 20.4% usage in May to 7.9% usage in June. But that doesn't mean it isn't good. Happy Moon is a Dark Fairy type with Shadow Shield, typically running Power Herb with Meteor Beam for strong Rock type damage and the special attack buff. Moonblast is a strong stab option, Earth Power for coverage, and Trick Room. It's basically like if Lunala had the Fairy type it likes to Terra into, but by default. Shadow Shield allows it to tank Angry Sun's Sacred Fire, and it can either set Trick Room or just OHKO it back with Meteor Beam. The biggest problem with Happy Moon is that its dark typing kind of holds it back. Unlike Lunala, it isn't immune to Fake Out, which means it's hard to safely set Trick Room, and it has to sacrifice a move slot to run Protect if it wants to keep Shadow Shield active. It's also weak to Fairy, which means it dies easily to Birdo, which doesn't have to worry about being weak to one of the best types in the game. If you want a dark type Trick Room setter, just run King Boo. If you want a strong Fairy type, just run Birdo. Happy Moon still finds a niche on teams that can use Tail Room mode, but it has certainly seen better days. I got a bit off topic with Happy Moon, but I thought this part of the video would be incomplete without it. I ended up turning a section about 1 mon into 6, but what can you do? So in short, Angry Sun is a very strong mon that I highly recommend. Need I remind everyone that this was on the winning team of the Open Tournament. I also need to call out Eternal Nacho for being the #1 Sun player in the format, and #1 in the ladder. He's cool, I respect him. But what the fuck do you mean Angry Sun needs Sunsteel Strike to hit Happy Moon through Shadow Shield? It can already hit everything it needs to, does it need a 3rd legendary signature move? Like, okay, Happy Moon also gets 2 signature moves with Moongeist Beam and Photon Geyser, but it's an honest mon that doesn't need to use them. Angry Sun just gets every fucking move it wants and then some. And yet it just uses the silly 100 BP legendary attacks most of the time. It gets Solar Blade, Iron Head, Lash Out, Morning Sun, Rock Slide, Wild Charge, Bitter Malice, Explosion, Draco Meteor, and of course Stomping Tantrum. You're telling me the sun can stomp just because it's angry and not the literal ground type that canonically throws a stomping tantrum can't? Its greed knows no bounds! And that sends me to the real last mon of this video. That's right, the moment you've all been waiting for. It's the last mon. It's time for... Major Burrows. Oh, cripes, where do I start? Major Burrows is a steel ground type with 115 base attack, 100, 135, 70 bulk, and arena trap. From that alone, I can only imagine you, the viewer watching this, shaking and quivering in your boots, about to pass out at the thought of a mon like Excadrill with a trapping ability. However, due to the popularity of After You Water Spout in the previous patch, it didn't see much play, but in a new format where Maul was presumed to be weaker, it quickly became widely used to beat common top-tier mons like Birdo, Sniffit, Gooper Blooper, and, with the right speed control from its partners, it also became a good option in the Angry Sun matchup. Burrows typically ran a set of Earthquake and Iron Head as its bread and butter, with other moves like Sucker Punch, Drain Punch, Swords Dance, and Protect as well. It was also a common partner with Huff and Puff due to the combination of Levitate with Electric Stab, allowing Burrows to freely spam Earthquake while Huff helped remove any water or flying type threats, although it still had to watch out for Magikoopa. The idea of using Burrows and Huff together quickly became popular and gave birth to the team that won Alpharet's Content Creator Invitational, piloted by DRXX. This team played with the idea of using good mons that were known for having some decent or good bulk behind screens set by Magikoopa, including Gooper Blooper, Happy Moon, and Heave Ho. After the Creator Invitational, Burrows' usage started to slip once the meta started to shift more towards speed over bulk, which left Burrows in the dust with its measly 50 base speed. The fast sub-Gooper set easily outspeeds and OHKOs Burrows with Snipe Shot, unless Burrows has an unrealistic amount of bulk investment. It also just doesn't do anything to King Boo. If you tried to run Clear Amulet, King Boo would just use Will-O-Wisp. If you tried to use Lumberry, it would just use Bitter Malice. And if you had neither, then tough luck, there goes your physical attacker. And since King Boo is a ghost type, it's immune to all forms of trapping, including Arena Trap. Maul outspeeds an OHKOs in Trick Room, Angry Sun would just position itself better, Exen would run fighting coverage, Birdo would just invest more in speed and hit Burrows with Flamethrower, or put it to sleep with Lovely Kiss, and Heave Ho could still hit it with a super effective Storm Throw, which is a fighting move that always crits. Heave Ho could also just use Wide Guard to negate Earthquake, because guess what? It's Burrow's only ground type move! The only physical single target ground moves it gets are the pitifully weak Sand Tomb, the 2-turn Dig, or Fissure. And what's the point of having an attack stat if you're just going to use an inaccurate OHKO move anyway? Burrows was originally considered a top 5 mon, originally sitting at 25% usage rate in May, but has since dropped to 17% usage and, in my opinion, is probably going to drop even lower. I mean, the only teams that you see it on anymore are from people that have been out of the loop or fucking Perish Trap. Kudos to the people that can get Perish Trap to work, but man, you're getting hard carried by Phanto and Burrows just sitting there because the only Perish Song mon is Eerie? Imagine, the worst Gen 3 ass, slow, frail, mixed attacker stat spread you can think of, and now think of one even worse. That's Eerie, and that's one of the only teammates Burrows hangs out with these days. It's so sad. It's a real shame too, because on paper, Burrows is an incredibly good mon, but its mediocre speed and limited move pool hold it back a lot more than you'd think. And that brings us to the secret, real last mon of the video, a ground type that was discovered to serve an entirely unique counter-meta role while also having the desired single-target ground move that Burrows so desperately wants. That mon is Klepto. Okay, this was just an excuse to gush about Klepto, but Burrows disappoint me so much that I thought I'd mention an alternative ground type. Klepto is a ground flying type with a pretty alright stat spread. It was unexplored for the longest time, since most people just took one look at its abilities and move pool and just thought it was ass. Its abilities are Keen Eye, which hardly matters since evasion and dropping and boosting moves are exceedingly rare, Pickpocket, which is fine I guess, and Sheer Force. However, unlike Landorus Incarnate, a popular Sheer Force ground flying type, Klepto has no good stab or coverage moves to take advantage of the Sheer Force damage boost. Landorus has a good special attack stat with a number of special attacks, whereas Klepto is a physical attacker that only has Sky Attack as a Sheer Force boosted stab move, a 2-turn move with a chance to miss. It was even worse before the 1.4 balance patch, since it didn't have Headlong Rush like it does now. People tried running a super offensive choice band set before, but it didn't really take off. What made Klepto stand out, however, was its very respectable 80 base speed, making it one of the faster physical attackers in the format, and a pair of moves that most people either never heard of or simply just forgot about: Skydrop and Snatch. In a standard playthrough, you might pick up a TM for one of these moves, see that no one on your team can learn them, and forget about them. Or the even worse option, you try them in battle and see they don't do anything and just assume the moves suck. These moves were also dexited in Gen 8 onward, so I'd understand if you've never heard of them before if you're a newer player. However, these two moves are vital assets in Klepto's kit. Skydrop is a 60 base power flying type physical attack that works similarly to Fly, only instead of flying in the air and hitting the opposing mon on the next turn, the user takes both itself and the target into the air and drops them both down in the next turn, damaging the target once they land. The target can't do anything while in the air either, or at least until Klepto finishes the attack. This means that if the target is slower than Klepto, they don't do anything on the turn that Skydrop is used, and if they're faster, they can't do anything on the turn Skydrop finishes. This makes her a very good disruption option, allowing a teammate to freely attack the opponent's ally without worrying about taking damage from the Skydrop victim, or it can lead to some sick Skydrop plus attack combos to finish off would-be threats. Skydrop even ignores redirection moves like Follow Me, and stops redirection from working, so if the Follow Me user is taken into the sky, your ally can attack their ally without aiming for a now empty slot. It is worth noting, however, that Skydrop can fail in a number of ways. Flying types don't take any damage from the attack itself, although they can still be taken into the sky, and the move will outright fail if the target is 200 kilograms or more. The full list of the Mariomon that are heavier are shown here. It also doesn't work while gravity's in effect, but, you just aren't gonna see that. Next up, Snatch is a status move with +4 priority that steals a wide variety of status moves that are used by anyone else on the field. The extremely high priority is really nice since it even outspeeds Fake Out, which is at +3. Snatch is especially nice at stealing the opponent's Tailwind, screens, setup moves like Swords Dance and Acid Armor, and even recovery moves. Really, the only relevant move Snatch doesn't steal is Coaching, although that's because it targets the user's ally and not the user itself. You'd have to make the prediction right, but just the knowledge that you have Snatch is enough to apply a lot of pressure. Assuming your opponent knows what Snatch does. Klepto typically runs a decently fast, specially bulky set with Citrus Berry and a moveset of Headlong Rush, Skydrop, Snatch, and Protect. It might also want to run Tailwind if the team doesn't have a dedicated Tailwind setter. Pickpocket isn't even a half bad ability to run with the set, since it can steal Exen or Bandit's item if either of them use Knockoff. Even with most EVs going into bulk and speed, a Headlong Rush with minimal attack investment still has a decent chance of outgoing max HP Gooper Blooper, and does around 70% minimum to max HP Maul. In fact, Klepto made second place in the open tournament alongside similar fast, bulky offense mons like Blarg, Exen, and fast sub Gooper Blooper. So with all that being said, does this mean that Burrow is a washed, unviable shitmon, and Klepto is a top 5 meta threat? Well,
No.
Burrow still placed in the top 8 of the open tournament, and Burrow's strengths are still really nice. Klepto just crumbles like paper to a stray Ice-type Sneeze, while Burrows can still take a lot of hits, even if its weaknesses are pretty rough. Spread ground type damage with steel type coverage is still very nice to have in a lot of matchups, and lately people have found some success in making burrows a late game trick room cleaner, and the Life Orb Sandforce set can really hurt on sand teams, although that's still not very common. At the end of the day, that's what I like most about Mariomon. The meta is always going through meta shifts, and some mons that were overlooked before might have the right niche, and mons that might seem washed can still have a solid place in the format. In fact, going entirely unscripted here, but recently, Iron Cleft has been seeing a lot of good usage too, and that's another good reason why burrows might make a comeback, because a 4x rock resist is really good in the face of a recoilless head smash. Mariomon VGC also started at the right place and the right time, in my opinion. With how high-powered Scarlet and Violet VGC is right now, it made me really appreciate how diverse and less stressful lower-power formats can be. And to be honest, I'm a little worried if Game Freak just cranks up the power level even more in future gens. As such, I'd like to make a declaration to you all. Are you tired of Caloric Shadow ruining your day? Are you bored of seeing the same small handful of Titans dish out OKOs or 2-hit KOs like they were nothing? Are you sick and tired of Miraidon blasting you to Kingdom Come with a Terra Electric boosted, Specs boosted, Hadron Engine boosted, Electric Terrain boosted, Stab boosted, super effective Electro Drift right into your fucking face? Then I can't recommend Mariomon VGC enough. If you want tips on how to build a proper team, try joining the Too Many Productions Discord, where you can also download the Mariomon patch and play it yourself. Better yet, join the Kong Island Draft League Discord server. We're a small but dedicated community with a passion for this silly little unofficial format. It's a hub for everything and anything Mariomon VGC, where we host weekly tournaments and practice best-of-3 games on our own battle-finding channel, since the latter is always dead. As of the writing of the script, we just wrapped up the first season of the Draft League, so be sure to get on now before it's too late to enter Season 2. Links to both the Too Many Productions Discord and the Kong Island Draft League will be in the video description. I'd like to thank Terratop2 for helping write the Huff and Burrow sections of the video, Look for helping review and fact-check the script, and Nacho, Owly, Paldean Bowser, Marshmallow, Devil, Quaza, Vivi, Deep Sea, and everyone else in the Draft League for helping build an awesome community that I'm proud to be a part of. And of course, AlphaRad and the Too Many Productions team for making a great game and allowing the competitive scene to even happen. So, yeah, that's the video. Go play Mariomon VGC, it's fun. Just kidding, the best capture in the game is Shroom, baby! Give it up for Shroom and won a tournament! It's got corrosive poison gas, it's triple S tier! Eat shit, Major Burrow!